You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello and welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Today we have Larry Mandelberg on the show. Larry solves complex problems and has identified the keys to helping leadership teams create sustainable growth. Among his 13 businesses, Larry has launched 4 startups, led a merger, and performed a successful turnaround. His first book, Businesses Don't Fail, They Commit Suicide, was released in April 2023. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you, Jean. I'm grateful to be here.
Me too. Grateful to have you. So let's dig in a little bit about your businesses don't fail, they commit suicide. It's an intriguing title. So what do you mean by that?
I mean that organizational failure is always driven by the leadership's failure to be prepared for pending changes. No external factors ever killed an organization. No businesses don't fail because of finance either. Finance is a lagging indicator of prior bad decisions. So if you think you just ran out of money and went broke, it's because somebody made a bad decision a long time ago. Self-inflicted.
Right. I love that you use the word lag indicator because a lot of people don't know about lead indicators and lag indicators, right? So could you, for the people that have never heard this, because I've been using this for years, can you explain what the lead and the lag indicators are and why they're important?
Oh, absolutely. A lagging indicator tells you what happened yesterday. It's lagging. It's after the fact. So when you see the indicator, it's telling you about something that's historical. It could be 5 minutes ago. It could be 5 years ago. For example, when someone gives you the temperature, that's a lagging indicator. It's something that was measured at a point in time in the past. Maybe it was moments or seconds ago, but it's still over with. A leading indicator tells you that something's coming. So, for example, when humidity goes up or down, or barometric pressure goes up or down, that's a leading indicator of a pending change in the weather. So the leading indicator is what you need to use to steer your business ship by, not lagging. You don't steer the ship from the back, right? You steer the ship from the front. So what you need are those indicators that are in front of you that are telling you what's coming.
Well, we are on the same page there because this is one of the things I teach my clients is it says you're not just driving and all of a sudden there's a pothole in the road. You are not having you're looking a little, ahead in the distance every now and then to see the pothole coming. And also it's not like you get clients, you do things, lead indicators to get on calls to then get clients. And the lag indicators are you're getting the client and money is coming into your business. Okay. So that's the first thing. So let's hear, we've heard the problems. Okay. This is interesting because a lot of people are going to be thinking, what? No, Larry, but I agree with you. So what is the fix? We just want to know the fix. We got the problem. And if they're listening and they're truly listening to what you said, the problem's there, that it's never what they think it is. Okay. So now just elaborate a little bit on what it is, a little bit, and then the fix.
So you said something that I want to comment on, which is really important. And I talk about this a lot. In retail, the customer is always right. In wholesale, the customer is always wrong. There's 23 years of research into this book, primary research, meaning I actually interviewed 250 executives in 100 companies. It's data. This is not opinion. And one of the things that I found was that the reason the customer is always wrong is because they're looking at symptoms masquerading as issues. They are trying to fix problems that don't exist because they're attacking symptoms. So the problem is that people are dealing with change. Success brings change, and they don't know how to deal with the change properly. There's a handful of classic reasons, which I outline in the book, but you ask for the solution. So the solution, there's only 3 problems that you need to fix to survive virtually indefinitely. And they're really relatively simple to understand. Doing them is hard.
Mm,
And it has to do with the maturity of the organization. So, early stage maturity, what I call youth, those organizations fail because of a lack of clarity of purpose. And people say to me all the time, we know what we do, we know why we're here. I said, fine. Pick any number of your staff, 2, 5, 20. Ask them to write down what your purpose is. You won't get two answers that are the same. That's not
mm,
clarity of purpose. As you mature, the problem becomes the ability to deliver consistent performance, to make commitments that you can live up to, that your clients can depend on, that you know are going to happen, right? It's the McDonald's. When you order a Big Mac, you know what it's going to look like. You know what the wrapper's going to look like. I ordered one once and it came in a Big Mac wrapper. And I said, that's not what I ordered. And the guy said, no, 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 it is. It's a Big Mac, but we ran out of wrappers. I said, okay, that's consistent of performance. That's why McDonald's is successful. The third and the next stage of maturity is integration of people. It's often I hear that this holy grail of human resources is engagement. And I always hear about it from the perspective of the employers trying to get the employee to act like an owner. Be involved, be engaged, take ownership, take control. No, it doesn't work that way. It's the leadership's responsibility to do two things. Make sure that employee understands the cog they are in the wheel of the organization, so their value and importance is factual, not lip service. They need to understand why they're important in the organization and how their efforts make the machine keep moving smoothly. That requires
mm,
a certain level of organizational maturity. And the second piece is information. And this is so sad. Mature organizations struggle mightily to provide mechanisms for employees to find information that they need when they need it easily, and to
mm,
deliver information that they have to the organization in a manner in which it's of value to the organization. So those are the two things. So it's lack of engagement of employees. I call it the 3 Ps: purpose, performance, people. That's how you
mhm,
fix the problem. I call them organizational or operational, what's the word I use? Operational imperatives. If you can do
mm.
those 3 things, you're going to be fine.
Okay, so the crux of the matter is that employees, team members, whatever we want to call them, because some people don't want to call them employees anymore, right? Team members, people
Mm-hmm,
working with you. We don't say for you anymore. So with you, for
mm-hmm,
the organization,
mm-hmm.
with the organization. The issue is they cannot readily put their hands or get their hands on the information they need to do their jobs well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's it. So the crux of the matter is,
That's one of the key problems. And that's
okay,
something that has to be fixed. But you have to be careful, because if you fix communication in an effort to
mm,
create engagement before you
mm,
have consistent performance or clarity of purpose, you're going to be
mm.
wasting your time.
Okay, so we first have to get everybody clear on the purpose of the organization, that it's a communal purpose, right? So there's some lack of education around a cohesion of purpose in the organization, right?
Mm-hmm,
Okay, that's the first one. But after that's sorted out, and we're all on the same page, that we all know, oh, this is what we're doing with this organization, because we all have the same
mm-hmm.
goal and purpose, then it's like, okay, how do I do my job properly? And you are correct. It is very hard. I find that people always complain. They're like, they told me to do this job, but I don't know how to. And I don't want to ask because then it looks like I'm incompetent, right? And I guess I'm supposed to know. And I'm like, well, you can't know because the organization has documents that pertaining just to that organization. It's not about your job, it's about the organization and your job in that organization, right? Okay, so that's a big problem.
Right.
Let's agree on that. There is and it's training
Yep.
people. Then the piece that I haven't heard before is that then training the employees, team members, people working for you, with you, how to get the information to the other people in a way that can be workable. Is that the third thing? Did I get that right? That they have to learn how to present.
what it is it's truly what it is engagement. And what do I mean by
Mhm.
engagement? The individual feels like they are actually a part of the organization. Don't make
Mm.
it more complicated than it needs to be. If I am
Right.
engaged, listen,
Mhm.
if you're playing with your child and you're distracted by, if you're a father and you're distracted by a good looking girl walking by in a bikini, or
Mhm.
if you're distracted by a food truck and the smell of food, you're not paying attention to
Mhm.
your child. If you're
Right.
engaged with your child, there's nothing that's going to distract you. Your focus is on that child. I
Mm.
don't want people to not be human and not have lives. I want people when
Mhm.
they're at work to be engaged with their organization. I want
Mm.
them to feel like their organization gives them value and they bring value to that organization. And in
Right.
so doing, they're committed and focused on making sure the organization is successful. They do
Mhm.
that and they succeed when they understand what their role is and how they
Mhm.
fit into the big picture and why what they
Right.
do is important.
Mm.
And when they have to find information to do their job, they know where to go get it. And when they
Right.
have information that's important to the organization that isn't relevant to what they do, but it's important to
Mhm.
the organization, they know where to deliver that information. That's the magic.
Yeah. There is a problem with dissemination
To the right people at the right
to the right
time.
people.
Yep.
Exactly. Because
Yep.
information is only there's those things about, like, information is not helpful if it's not at the right time to the right person in the right way, right? Right way, right time, right person, and very instructional of how to operate.
And something that people don't think about often, in my experience, I don't mean to sound like I know all this. This is
Mm.
my lived experience. Information has a half life,
Mm.
just like radioactive material. It's
Mhm.
valuable for a period of time. At some
Right.
point in time, that information isn't valuable. So if it isn't
Right.
timely, it's got to be
Mhm.
directed to the right place and it's got to be timely.
Right. Yes, I agree. And well, we won't talk about the big problem in organizations where people don't share, the personality type that doesn't share information, one of those problems. There are a lot of people in organizations, there's the different personalities of what problems or issues people have in their jobs, and one of them is the personality that won't readily share information, which kind of drives me crazy because I'm a sharer and just tell us everything we need to know, you know?
Can I speak to that briefly?
Absolutely.
So that's one of the components of purpose.
Mm.
People don't understand purpose in the way I define it. And I'll grant you, I have a proprietary definition of purpose, but it involves three things. It involves the long term objectives of the organization, it involves the objectives the organization fulfills for their clients,
Mhm.
specifically, what is the value we deliver, who do we deliver it to, and how do we deliver
Mhm.
it? It's not about
Mm.
a product or a service. It's what is the value we deliver, right? I have clients
Mhm.
who manage water. They think
Mhm.
they're suppliers. They're not. They
Mhm.
facilitate crop growth. That's the value.
Mhm.
They give them the water when they
Mhm.
need it for the crops. It has nothing to do
Right.
with turning on a pump, right? And then the
Right.
third
Right.
thing is the culture that we want to operate within. And we have to, diversity is of great, great value. When you bring, business is a combination of conflicts. When you bring diverse people together, you have different philosophies, different perspectives, different ways of doing things. That is a richness that gives you perspective
Mhm.
beyond anything you can pay for. But it
Mhm.
creates conflict because different cultures have different sets of values. So part of
Mm.
clarity of purpose is finding common values that everyone from all diverse cultures can agree on and self-govern by. So you can live
Mm.
what Dov Seidman in his book called How calls the should culture, as opposed to a culture
Mhm.
dictated by rules. You want people to be
Mm.
able to say, I know our values. I know what we stand for. I know the value we're here. I know why we're doing this. I don't need to look for a
Mhm.
rule to tell me if I can do something. I'm going to do what should be done. It's the should culture.
Got it.
So when you build
Got
that
it.
kind of a culture, the people you're talking about
Mhm.
say, ugh, I don't want to be part of this. And they self select out.
Mhm.
And it's It's
Mm.
absolutely freaky how effective it is.
Wow. Okay, so you're saying if people fix the organization in this way, they won't commit suicide. And it's really
That's
just about
correct.
this. It is not about all those exterior things they think it's about. Fascinating. Okay, so now what put you in a position to write a book like this and what makes you the expert?
My family, I'm fifth generation in a family owned business. We started in the 1850s selling hides and furs. And in a series of moves around the country, from Canada to Texas to Nebraska, the family's business evolved from hides and furs to scrap to agricultural scrap. As ag became automated, they got involved in bearings and gears and hydraulic hoses, and then motors came into play, and then we got into engines and vehicles. And in the 70s, at our auto parts store and machine shop, my father said to me, "How did we go from zero automobile manufacturers to 300 in 30 years and then back down to three? How did that happen? How is that
Mm,
possible?" And while he wasn't exactly right in his details, generally speaking, he was accurate. He said that to me, and honestly, I didn't care. What I was intrigued by was, how can any business fail? Why would a business fail? Because my family had never seen failure. We had always been able to
mm,
adapt to both the environment and the culture and the need. So it's like, why would a business fail? If you never see it, you have a hard time understanding it, right? If it's not intentional. So I said, I want to understand why businesses fail. And I started researching that in my teens. And that's what gave me the data to write this book. I get a little skittish about the concept of a expert. I have data. If the data is relevant to you and you think the data is valuable, follow it. I've got
mm.
proof. I've done 6 years of proof of concept. I did the whole thing, right? You create the hypothesis, you build a construct, you run it through, you come up with a theory, then you do the proof of concept on the theory. 6 years of proof of concept. It works. I've used it with
Wow.
House candidates, federal House candidates who have multiple offices around the country. I've used it in schools. I've used it in nonprofits. I've used it in for profits. I've used it in sports organizations. It's effective irrespective of legal structure, revenue, or size. It's all about human nature and how people interact with one another inside a business that's built to serve a market, right?
Mm. Right. Well, it wouldn't matter about the tax structure because you're dealing with human beings inside an organization. So this just works. Well, that is fascinating about your family. And you started in 1850. And what I found when you were talking was that's so interesting. You started with hides, which were horses. Like, that was a way of, being propelled forward and it ended up with cars, the new way of being propelled forward. Right.
Exactly.
That's interesting that how it progressed along kind of the same lines, but sort of integrating. It wasn't complete. It's not completely unrelated at all, right? You guys kept adapting.
You're giving me chills
Why am I giving you chills?
because you made that connection. That nobody makes that connection. You're the only person that's ever said that to me.
Oh, really? No, I just got chills because it was immediate. I thought, oh, yeah, that was the business. Then they had to adapt it. And it got to vehicles, which is normal because, we're not now trading hides unless you're in the leather industry, right?
Right.
But that was what they had. They had horses and cows, and that was propelling. And then you kept adapting. So that's fascinating. So I thought they adapted, but then they didn't. They didn't adapt when you lost all your clients. So that was the fascinating part where there was a disconnect at some point when it came to management of people. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like your family was really good at a lot of things, like selling. Am I right?
I wasn't around for most of those 170 years. All I know is they survived, and I know that if you don't grow, you die. So they had to be pretty good at
Right.
something. Yes.
They were good at selling, okay? Because a lot of companies are very good at selling, but then they come across the problems you're addressing right now and they commit suicide and they're like, but we're really good at selling. Yeah, but everybody working in your company hates working there. So they're not going to,
Yeah.
every employee that does not perform is losing a company about $1 million according to the size of the company. That's why it's so hard and so important to hire well. And I used to be a top executive recruiter on Wall Street. So I know about high level
Wow.
hiring, and I know the amount of money that you can lose if you hire the wrong person at that level, right? It's just
It's scary.
all the loss. Scary, and it's more when they're an investment banker if they got the wrong person. So we had to get the right person in. Of course, they're saying it's $1 million of loss for of a lower, not low, but lower level of management even. And when you do it, that you are losing $1 million because the person's not selling and they're not helping other people to sell. They're not smooth. You're losing customers. All sorts of things by hiring the wrong person, and even in small, tiny businesses, like even a small coaching company hiring the wrong VA, you're losing money. Okay, so did you figure out, because now I'm fascinated, did you figure out why they went from 300 to 3? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, well, the answer is not well suited to this forum because it's not a simple, quick little answer. It's fairly
Okay.
complicated, but it has to do with understanding the market and understanding the value that you're delivering. There is a
Mm,
capacity issue too. There's a lot of factors that were going on. You have to understand historically what was happening during those times. And,
mm.
there were automobiles manufactured, and most people don't know this. They were making cars in Europe before we made cars. So we were not the first manufacturers of automobiles. So it's a fairly involved
Oh, we all
thing.
thought it was Ford.
No, 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 no,
How did we think
no.
that was
It,
Ford and nobody else knew? How do we not know that?
well, this is probably not going to go well, but our country is very naive and immature. We think we know everything. We think what we do is right, and everything everybody else does is wrong. And consequently, um, we're not really looked at in the most respectable way around the world. We're know-it-alls, and
I do happen to know that because I grew up in Australia and then I lived in Europe for 8 years. And by the way, 6 of those years were in France. So I know that. Okay.
yeah,
I only moved
yeah.
back here as an adult. So I'm not like a typical American. I've lived in, and I understand exactly what you're saying. And depending where you travel, because I've traveled all over the world but I've lived in other countries for a
Yeah.
large part of my life. So yes, of course, we had the whole idea of how Australians see America, the whole idea how French people see America, and also Viennese, because I lived in Vienna, and also traveling a lot. So I understand completely. Now, funnily enough, let's segue into this. You will be moving to France soon, right?
Yes, in about, well, March 11th, actually, 2025, for those hearing this recorded.
Very interesting, because what's interesting about you, Larry, is your process to do things. When you explained to
Thank
me
you.
your process to where you're welcome, to where you're going to move, I thought it was interesting. And I know this is not related, but can you explain to everybody on the show how you came up with where you're going to move, your process?
We want to live in a Western European culture. There are physical limitations that both my wife and I have. She has some temperature limitations due to certain illnesses. She has some infrastructure. She has bad back and some other things. So we can't live too far north. We can't live too far south because of the heat. And one of the things that's important to us is to be able to travel Europe easily. So there's some logistical issues with Eastern Europe. Plus, with Eastern Europe, you've got Ukraine and Russia, and until that stabilizes, that's not safe. So we realized that the three countries that worked for us were Greece, Spain, and France. So in 2018, we started making plans to move. We've been doing this planning for 6 years. We lost 3 years to COVID. And what we do is we go over to one of those countries for a month, and we make what we call city dating tours. So we look at the things that are critical. We don't want to have a car, so we want to make sure that it's flat enough for us to be able to bicycle. We want to make sure there's good public transportation, good access to flights, and good access to trains. Because as you know, trains are the primary form of transportation in
Mhm.
Europe. So wanted a city that wasn't too big, city that wasn't too small. So we've literally been going over there city dating cities for 6 years. When we found Bordeaux this year, we found 3 cities that worked, and we talked about them, and we ranked the pros and cons, and we ended up with Bordeaux. And gosh, we just couldn't be happier. Every day we get more proof that that's the right place to be.
I'm so excited for you because France is a beautiful country and you wouldn't want to live in Ukraine. It's very cold there. Anyway,
Right,
even with war or
right.
no war, it's freezing in winter in Ukraine.
Right.
Not that I've been there, but we all know that. So I'm super thrilled. But I just liked your process of city dating. You didn't randomly, you had all this stuff and you narrowed it down. It's sort of like how you're doing your consulting. Well, Larry, this has been very interesting. So, and then you consult with, as far as what we were talking about earlier, you consult with companies of how to apply your philosophies and techniques, correct?
Correct. Let me just share the subtitle of the book. The title is to get your attention. The subtitle really is what the
Mm,
book's about. And the subtitle is
mhm,
How to Survive Success and Thrive in
mm,
Good Times
mm,
and Bad. And
mm,
what I do is I work with leadership teams of mid sized organizations. The only thing that I don't do retail. I don't do work with organizations that are retail based because I don't understand it.
mhm,
It may work, I don't know. I don't do work typically with publicly traded companies because they are there to provide a different value. They have value to their
mm,
investors. That's not my
mhm,
gig. My gig is value
mm,
to the people you're delivering products and services to, not your investors.
mhm.
So they have to
Right.
be of a certain size and within a certain niche, but within that, and they have to want to be sustainable. If you don't care, right,
Yes.
what difference does it make? You can build a, $100 million consulting company.
I think people do want to be sustainable.
You'd be surprised.
Really? Why would you not want to be sustainable?
Well, because these people start companies and they say, you know what? I don't care. I did my job. If the thing survives, it survives. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You'd be surprised how many people have that attitude.
That's a strange attitude. That is a very odd attitude when you put your blood, sweat, and tears into a company that maybe it's going to survive and maybe not. I've never heard that before. So you just taught me something. But there was something you said earlier, and I wanted to question this. I was thinking about it after while you were talking, and I thought, why, when you have a wholesale company, why is the customer always wrong?
Because they think they know what the problem is and they never dig deep enough to really understand it. They never get past the symptoms.
Because of their wholesaling?
Well, no, it's because, well, first of all, think of it a little bit as a play on words, right? It's funny, it's
Mm,
entertaining, it's a little flippant. In retail, the customer is
hmm.
always right. In wholesale, the customer is always wrong.
Yes.
When you go to
Right.
businesses that deal with other businesses, they're
Hmm.
driven by the need to serve and be successful. Retail is driven by the
Mm,
need for emotional satisfaction, right? So it's a
yeah.
different driving force. So when you have that
Mm,
driving force that tells you, I'm here to really serve my customer because I want them long term, I want to make sure that they
mm,
that they see the value, that they feel the value, that
mm,
they recognize the value, and that they'll continue to work with us, and that they'll
hmm.
they'll they'll send us referrals. The
Mm,
problem with that is that they don't want change. They
mm,
want things to stay the same. The world is constantly
yeah.
changing. This is the universal
Hmm.
conflict. And because of that,
Mm,
most people in these businesses, these organizations that I've designated my demographic niche, if you will, are so
mhm,
busy that they don't have the time, and most of them aren't trained for critical thinking. So they don't
mhm,
stop and say, why is this happening? What they do is they say,
mm.
what can we do to fix it? And that's the problem. They're looking at the symptom. They're not saying, why is this happening? And that's what I teach them how to do.
So it was just the interesting thing about wholesale, and I thought, well, so what you're saying is you're selling to a person. They are always right because the person is buying the shoes, right? Let's say shoes. The person's going into the store. They're buying the shoes. If they have a problem, the customer is always right. Okay. And
Mhm.
then you said wholesaler. So if I'm selling the shoes wholesale to the store, that's not the customer. They're wrong because of what you just said, because they're not the end customer.
Well, It's interesting that you use shoes as a metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it in terms of clothes. One of the
Okay.
firms I have worked with is a
Mm-hmm.
franchisor who owns men's clothing stores. I work with
Okay.
corporate headquarters. I don't work with the retail outlets. When the
Mm-hmm.
retail outlets have problems and corporate has a problem, the
Mm-hmm.
retail outlets are always wrong about what the problem is. The problem is something underneath what they're doing because they're
Uh,
reacting emotionally. They're reacting emotionally the same way that they're trained to react to their customers who are buying emotionally.
mm.
When you go to buy a
Oh, I get
suit,
it.
when you go to buy a pair of shoes, what makes
Mm.
you successful, what as a consumer makes me happy and what as a salesperson makes me successful is
Mm-hmm.
I walk away happy, right?
Yes.
Emotion is a key factor. It has nothing to do
Mm-hmm.
with the efficacy of the shoe, with how effectively the shoe works, right? It has to
Right.
do with how satisfied I am emotionally when I walk away. If you're in corporate
Right.
headquarters, you don't care about that customer. You care that store needs to perform effectively, right? And if
Ah,
they're not
okay. I
performing
get it.
effectively, emotion isn't in there. Does that make sense?
Right. They're wrong because the emotion's not in there, that they're just thinking numbers.
They're wrong because they're letting emotion keep them from looking at the root problem. They're
Yeah.
reacting to symptoms. The emotion
Mm.
filters into the wholesale, and it shouldn't.
Mm.
And it does
Right.
because it's so common in our society. Make me happy,
Mm-hmm.
make me great, make me smart, make me
Mm-hmm.
big, make me pretty. Look at the makeup, look at the
Mm-hmm.
clothes, look at the car, look at the house. That's what we live in.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into a
Mm.
business, I can't tell you how many times I've had to tell my clients, you have to leave your emotions at the door. Your decisions have to be made on sound business data and risk analysis and critical
Mm-hmm.
thinking, not emotion.
Mm-hmm.
If you get to
Mm-hmm.
a point, you're the boss. If you want to do something because you want to, and it isn't what's aligned with the facts, you have that right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to do
Mm-hmm.
that, be prepared for the consequences. And that's why it's when the emotion comes in. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. And I'm laughing because I literally tell my clients every day the only thing standing between you and success are your emotions. That is the only thing. And they're looking at me like, oh, isn't it this? I'm like, nope. The only thing, and I'm very categorical after 13 years of coaching people,
Yeah.
all sorts of businesses. And you can see they're like, no, that's not it. And I'm like, yeah, it is, because usually those emotions are fear and anxiety and bad emotions, not joy. Because joy is not standing in your way. That's a good emotion. But trust me on this. Only thing standing between you and that load of cash over there on that table, it's like a blocking wall of emotions. And some of them get it. And then it unlocks and they're like, boom, let's face it. If we had no fear of, oh, what if this doesn't work? Or no fear of, what if this works too hard? Or any of that, or the anxiety, we would just be like these wonderful bots, not like emotionless, but we would just do the work. We would just analyze, figure the problems out, figure out what went on and what the solution is, and just execute without emotions. And I feel like when we're doing marketing, there shouldn't be any emotion in it when you're executing, because, oh, are they going to like this? Are they going to like my video? Are they going to like that? Are they going to buy? When you get emotion out of it, something unlocks and you just are a client magnet because the
That's right.
everybody understands, oh, there's no fear. When I start to feel a little bit of fear or something, I always clear it and I just like get another client like immediately by magic. It's like my magic. So I love what you said. And I love that you're applying this also to bigger business, because usually we're just talking about this with smaller businesses. So, Larry, I thank you for that public service announcement. And I hope my clients are listening.
One of the things that I say is on the back of the book, it says, finally, a guide for the overlooked real growth years.
Mm, Well, I love this. Larry, thank you so much for turning up. Before we leave, I want you to pretend that you are walking through Bordeaux and you meet somebody that actually speaks English in case you don't speak French, okay? And you meet with them and you're probably never going to see them again. And you have a little chat about what you do. And before you're leaving, you want to leave them with a mindset or a philosophy, not to sell them because you might never see them again. What would you tell this person as far as like, okay, here's the one thing I want you to know about business and life? What would that be?
If you can't understand your purpose, you can't be successful. And if you're going to work with others, you have to have a common purpose.
Okay, so that's a mic drop. Thanks so much, Larry. And if you are listening now, please subscribe, please share, please turn up, and please love what we're doing. And we'll see you on the next one. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.